Hello and welcome to episode 3, the final episode of our new show, Election in Review. As you know, it's election eve. We wish you all a happy election eve. And tomorrow is the day we've all been waiting for now for the past 4 years, and that is the 2020 election day. Coming up tomorrow, we've got races for House, Senate, President, Governor, state legislature, and local offices. You can catch our coverage tomorrow starting at 6 p.m. We're going to be following races for House, Senate, Governor, and President, but we'll also update you as state legislative chambers change hands. So tonight we're going to be discussing the key counties in the key states for president tomorrow. We're going to start by talking about which states you should watch tomorrow, after which we'll go through the important counties in each state that are really going to serve as not only bellwethers for whether or not the winner of this election can be determined on election night, but determining factors in terms of whom we expect to win the election tomorrow. And essentially, counties can shed a great amount of light into the differences in how the election's swinging from the last election in 2016 and what it means for the winner tomorrow. So we're going to welcome on our panelists. We have Jackson Bryman. We have Eric Cunningham. We have Armin Thomas. And we have Jared Stone, another regular guest of ours. So welcome, guys. We're happy to have you on here tonight. And I think it's going to be really awesome because a lot of our viewers follow states, but most of the time they don't follow the, as New York Times said, battlegrounds within a battleground. It can really make or break not only the statewide total, but really shed some light on how the election's changing and how oftentimes coalitions have changed since the last election. So we're going to start first off by taking a look at the key states. But first I want to give you guys time to introduce yourselves, just do a quick little thing. And most of our viewers know you, but we have some new people on here. So I don't care which order you do it in, just make sure you introduce yourself, and I'll pull up our Elections Daily ratings so we can talk about that. So I guess we'll just go bottom right up to the top. So Armin, Jared, Jackson, and Eric, you guys can go. Starting with Armin.
Hey there, Armin. I'm I guess an elections mapper, modeler, analyst, and I followed this stuff closely, all the way from Alabama back in 2017. I'm a senior in college, and one of the things I've been doing is, statistically predicting a lot of elections and the presidential race and stuff. So glad to be here.
Great. I'm Jared Stone. My Twitter handle, as you can see, is @JStonePolitics. I'm a freshman in college right now. I'm a regular contributor to the Map Room, which Eric and Nick Morris are also on. I also post articles to Elections Daily, and so I've been as active as I possibly can be on the scene. I'm more into the qualitative aspects of election mapping and analysis, and so I'm really looking forward to this.
Oh, it's me.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Jackson. My Twitter handle is @KilometerBryman. I'm a sophomore in high school. I tweet into the void about most things regarding politics, but I'm an obsessive consumer of granular level data, and I'm excited to be on here talking about the crucial counties to watch.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm Eric Cunningham. I'm the editor-in-chief of Elections Daily and the founder of Elections Daily. So I'm pretty involved in our processes here and in terms of making the rating calls, which we unveiled yesterday. Got a great response from people. Seemed to be a lot of people really interested in the results and in the ratings, and so we really appreciate the positive reception that we got for them.
Mm-hmm. If you guys all know me, but I'm Harrison. I'm the head of the elections team at Elections Daily. I worked with Eric to create the elections team, propose the idea, and here we are on our first election night, election eve. Really looking forward to it, and I'm happy to have exercised my role at Elections Daily to help truly grow the organization and form a bond with all of our reporters on accurate, unbiased election reporting. So without further ado, we're going to start our final episode. I'm personally extremely excited for what's going to be the third election cycle that I've followed in my lifetime. And I know everyone else here is also going to be excited. So we're going to start with our Elections Daily ratings, and we're going to use this as the basis to discuss the key states. So what we describe as the key states essentially are states that are either rated as leans Democratic or leans Republican. And most of these states came out of the toss-up column because, as you know, we, like Sabato's Crystal Ball, pick our toss-ups in all levels of our race ratings. So president, Senate, House, and governor. So we've picked a winner for every important race, from governor up into through Congress all the way to the presidential level. So we're going bold, and we hope we can have a good accuracy rating. So without further ado, these are our current presidential ratings from the race ratings document we released the other day. We have former Vice President Biden defeating President Trump with 335 electoral votes to Trump's 203 electoral votes. Compared to some other forecasters that have predicted Biden wins in Georgia and Texas, our model is actually, to some extent, fairly favorable, or at least more favorable for Trump than some of the other ones. I just want to note right now that even though we consider Biden the favorite to win this election, a Trump victory is still possibly in the cards. We never want to count anything out after 2016. And a lot of these states that are currently rated as leans Democratic could theoretically go to Trump, but vice versa. If Biden wins by more than this, on the other extent, a lot of these leans are states such as Georgia, Ohio, and Iowa, and Texas as well could flip. But these are our ratings. We think they're pretty balanced. So we're going to be going over essentially some of the key states here, some of these important battleground states. We're probably not going to hit all of them, but we're going to be hitting the closest ones that were closest in 2016, and we expect to be close again. So without further ado, we're going to start with the state of Pennsylvania. And I think it's very important that we start with the state of Pennsylvania because a lot of people are saying this election could really come down to the state of Pennsylvania tomorrow. It's definitely a state that Biden wants to win. Biden stressed the fact that he originally grew up in Scranton there before moving on to Delaware, and he stressed his roots there. He's tried to appeal to suburban voters in the Philadelphia collar counties, which he seems to be doing pretty successfully. We're expecting him to increase on Hillary Clinton's already fairly strong performance there in 2016. The question is really, though, can he make inroads in some of these working class areas that ended up leaving the fold in 2016? Erie, southwestern Pennsylvania. Can he get back to Obama level losses there? Obviously, he's not going to win it because it hasn't been Democratic on the federal level for a while. And he's also got his home base in Scranton. So you've got Lackawanna County and Luzerne County would be another one to see how well Biden does in Luzerne, which also voted for Trump by a decent amount last time. So basically, guys, what do you have to say about Pennsylvania? I'd like you guys to each give me a county you really think we should watch tomorrow in terms of an indicator of whether or not Pennsylvania is going to go either way. Obviously, if Trump wins Florida and North Carolina and even Georgia, then he needs a state like Pennsylvania to win. So I'll throw it first to Eric. Eric, what do you think? What would you say about Pennsylvania right now? What's the county you're watching the most in Pennsylvania tomorrow?
Mm-hmm. I know a lot of people have talked about some counties. I think one that's really kind of important to look at is Luzerne County. This isn't by any means a swing county at this point. This is one that even Lou Barletta managed to win in his fairly disastrous Senate campaign last time. I say disastrous facetiously. He did all right, all things considered. It wasn't as bad as Tom Wagner. But the point is, this county is one that has traditionally been more Democratic, but has had an opening for Republicans. Trump actually won it by around 20 percentage points last time. If Biden is to win the state, he may well do this through this northwestern or northeastern Pennsylvania area based around Scranton and Wilkes-Barre. And so this is one to kind of look at in terms of margins. Biden could easily, if he's having a good night, get this within 10, 15 points, which would probably signal a pretty solid performance for him. But if Trump is holding steady in this area, that kind of bodes well for Biden's appeal with some of these working class voters in Pennsylvania that he's trying to peel back on.
Yeah, so it's definitely a county that's worth watching. It's obviously, at least in terms of how it voted in 2016, less Democratic than neighboring Lackawanna County, which still voted for Hillary Clinton even as she lost the state statewide. But as you can see, a very major swing here. I mean, Obama still carried it by about 5% against Mitt Romney in 2012. But Trump was the first Republican to win it since Bush Sr. in 1988 against Michael Dukakis. And his 19-point margin of victory was the second largest in recent history. As you can see, Richard Nixon procured 22% of the vote here. But again, as you can see, I mean, a massive swing, well over a 20% swing towards the Republicans. So again, as you said, if Biden can trim those margins there, that's definitely a good sign for his improvement in eastern Pennsylvania, but also in the state as a whole.
Because it's full of those working class voters, white working class in particular.
So, Jackson, what do you think about Luzerne? Or is there any other county up here that you'd look at? Would you look at Lackawanna County? How do you think Biden's going to do in this general vicinity of Pennsylvania?
Well, firstly, I think Biden loses Luzerne County. It has swung a lot, and the reversion that we saw in parts of Michigan and Wisconsin did not hold true for much of northeastern Pennsylvania in 2018. Lackawanna, yes. Luzerne, no. Luzerne was actually 1% to the left of the national vote in 2016. In 2012, and then it swung 25 points to the right in 2016. And I don't foresee it coming back too much. I think if Biden needs to win the state, he has to get 40%. If on a good night, he'll crack 45. But I think the county in the state to watch is actually Bucks County, and Bucks is interesting in that it's suburban, but it really has not taken off leftward in the way that something
Chester
that like
County,
Chester
for example.
County or Montgomery County has. The lower part of Bucks is
Delco.
very industrialized. It's tracked always 1 to 2% bluer than the state. Tom Wolf won it by 19. Bob Casey won it by about 15 when he won by 13%. So I think Biden has to win it by about 3 points to carry the state.
And just to look at Bucks County real quick, I'll share my screen again so you guys can take a look at these results. This was the result in 2016 in Bucks County. So as you can see, Clinton won it by a little under 1%. So a very narrow victory, about 3,000 votes. Some people have described Bucks County as essentially a mini Pennsylvania. But as Jackson mentioned, a Democrat winning it is not just enough. As Jackson just said, a Democrat like Biden would need to win it by around 3 points because, as you can see here, Clinton's win by less than 1 point was not enough to win the county. If you look back at the swing, though, if you go back to 2012 in the county, actually, that's not what I wanted. I wanted to get the raw county results. But if we look at the raw county results table here, as you can see, Clinton underperformed Obama by a small amount. I mean, Obama himself greatly underperformed his margin in 2008. But again, in 2012, Obama only won the county narrowly, but he still won the state as a whole. But that's definitely fascinating. And I'm going to ask the rest of the panel now what you guys think of what Jackson said. Jackson, you said 3 points for Biden and Bucks, right, to win the state? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay, and I'll invite Armin on real quick to say something if he'd like. Armin, what do you think about not just Bucks County in general, but how the collar counties of Philadelphia are going to vote in this election? I mean, Chester County was one where we saw a huge swing last time. It went from Romney County to being a Clinton plus 9 county. Now Biden's expected to win it by 15 or more, potentially, depending on how much the suburbs continue to swing left. So what are you thinking about the collar counties, and how much of a difference do they make for Biden statewide tomorrow?
He's going to need to pad his margins there because, as Jackson said about an hour ago, rural Pennsylvania, the ceiling for Democrats is much, much lower in rural Pennsylvania than it is in rural Michigan or rural Wisconsin. So he needs to make up those margins elsewhere, namely in and around, large metropolitan areas like the collar counties of Philly and then Allegheny as well, which is Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm. And Jared, I'll invite you on. What do you think is the county that you're going to be watching or paying the most attention to tomorrow in Pennsylvania?
So the ones that were brought up, Luzerne County, Bucks County, those are very interesting counties to watch, and those are definitely up on the list. But one more county that I'd like to consider is actually Beaver County, which is in the west of the state. It is next to Allegheny County, which is home to Pittsburgh, and Beaver has some interesting trends going on, and it is sort of a microcosm of the state because actually the southeastern portion of the county, there are some communities there which are wealthier, which are more suburban, have higher degrees of college educational attainment, and they've actually trended left. Some of them have actually moved left. They have gone more towards Hillary from Romney. And generally, those are some regions that are trending leftward. However, the rest of the county is more rural in nature, and so it has moved more right. And so, again, that's why I call it a microcosm of the state, because you see those competing trends. And so really the margin there, I think, is what's going to be important. And I anticipate that Trump will win the county. But we're also going to see some interesting down ballot effects going on there. It's a part of the 17th congressional district, which is represented by Connor Lamb. And it's an interesting district that swoops into a lot of the wealthier suburbs of Allegheny County, a lot of the areas around Pittsburgh. And so it's one that's going to be won quite comfortably by Connor Lamb. And the district as a whole was one that actually did not shift that much between McCain, Romney, and Trump. And so it's really going to be an interesting one to see. And if Trump is able to hold strong margins in a county like Beaver, I think he's going to have a good shot at winning the state. However, if Biden can take advantage of his strength among suburbanites, if he can pare down those Trump margins throughout the county, then I think it bodes well for someone like Biden.
Yeah, I actually, before we move on, I have 2 more counties I want to give the viewers to watch tomorrow. One of them is obviously Philadelphia County, which makes up the bulk of the Democratic vote. Hillary Clinton got around 82% of the vote here in the last election. But the reason why I want to bring this up, and let me share my screen again, is because even though Hillary Clinton obviously performed well in this part of Pennsylvania that happens to be its most Democratic county, Hillary Clinton still underperformed Barack Obama's 2012 performance. And had Hillary Clinton met Barack Obama's 2012 performance, definitely would have improved her chances of winning Pennsylvania statewide as a whole. So as you can see here, Obama won the county by around 71%. Hillary Clinton only got about 67%. So that's about a 4% underperformance there. So what I'm saying for watch tomorrow on election night, and obviously Pennsylvania is going to be one of the states that's slower to count, is that not only are we going to have higher turnout, as you can see, turnout was up from 12 to 16. It's definitely going to be up almost certainly from 2016 to now. But I would say, first off, does Biden at least meet what Romney got in 2012? And second off, can Biden exceed what Romney got in how much Obama won the county by in 2012? So that's an urban area that I'd watch, because the urban areas are important too, because had Hillary Clinton hit Obama numbers in a lot of these counties like Philadelphia County or Wayne County, then she essentially could be president right now. And then the second county I'm going to discuss with you guys is Erie County.
Mhm.
And Erie County is one of those working class counties that swung towards Trump by a significant amount in the last election. It was a county that Obama won by double digits both times. He won it by 16 points in 2012, and it swung over almost pretty much 17 points to the right and was narrowly won by Trump. So what I would say for you to do tonight or tomorrow, I should say. I'm starting to mess up my sentences because I'm excited about the election, as you can probably tell. But I would look at Erie tomorrow as a bellwether kind of for how Trump's working class support is holding up in Western Pennsylvania and in the state as a whole. Because even though the assumption is Biden's going to flip this county back, it's unlikely that he's going to hit Obama numbers here, is what I'm trying to say. So the question is, how much support can Trump really hold? I think Erie is a very good example of a county that can serve as a bellwether for that and how we're trending from 2016 to now. So that's the second county that I tell you guys to watch in Pennsylvania there. Any other
Erie
thoughts
is
on
much more.
Pennsylvania?
Go ahead. Go ahead. I was going to say Erie is much more characteristically Midwestern than a place like Luzerne and Lackawanna.
Yeah.
Bob Casey won Erie by 19. Tom Wolfe won it by I think like 22 or whatever. So it really swung back to being well left of the state in 2018. And it's kind of like a Sauk County, Wisconsin. I think is a good analogy. And so I actually expect it to be quite a bit bluer than the state. If Biden wins Pennsylvania by 5, I think he wins Erie by maybe 8. I think it'll definitely swing back by more than some of those Appalachian areas.
Yeah, it's tied more with like Ohio and the western portions of New York than the rest of Pennsylvania.
That's why I was making clear when I was discussing it that it's a bellwether to see how much President Trump's support is holding up in Western Pennsylvania specifically, because obviously Luzerne County, Lackawanna County, the Scranton area, that's a different type of working class.
Yeah, I think Allegheny County is actually one to keep a look at because it's been very, very stable.
Yeah.
I mean, I've
Well, there are lots of countervailing trends in the different demographic areas.
For our viewers, that's where Pittsburgh is. So let me pull it up real quick.
Yeah, it's not. It's a Democratic county, but it votes more like if you're familiar with Buncombe County in North Carolina, where it's Democratic, but it's within 60, usually 50, 55 to 60%, not some enormous landslide margins. Democrats haven't actually hit over 60% here since 1964. It's always been when they've won between 52 to 50, 57, 58, 59%. Even Obama only hit,
it's been pretty reliable, as you can see. I mean, it swung 2 points to the left from 2012 to 2016. It's probably going to swing to the left again, but overall, I think you're right about it being fairly consistent.
Yeah, a lot of that was vote bleed from Trump. I mean, a lot of this is Pittsburgh, right? I mean, it's about to cross below 300,000 population for the first time since the 1800s. So, I mean, it's seen that sort of decline for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, any other comments on Pennsylvania before we move on?
Yeah, I was just going to say one county that I didn't get to mention that I think will be interesting as another Western Pennsylvania bellwether is Washington County. And that is, exurban to rural, southwest of Pittsburgh. And, it really, really swung rightward in 2016, but it really swung back in 2018. So
Yeah, it got 11 points more Republican between 2012 and 2016.
And from what I can tell, there's been a lot of reversion going on all over of Pennsylvania among white working class voters, but the least amount of the reversion is happening in places that are very coal heavy, like southwestern Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to
Shocking.
bring that up real quick before we move on, because it's what I was talking about. And obviously, one of our star reporters, Joe Szymanski, was talking about how if there's any place in Pennsylvania Trump either attains exactly where he was at 2016 or potentially does better, it's in coal country in Pennsylvania, which is in the Southwest. I mean, as you can see here, Greene County, which is right here, was essentially one of the hearts of the swing away from the Democrats towards Trump. And you can see here that this is the heart of coal country along the West Virginia border, swung heavily for Trump. I mean, I can pull
and
up.
don't forget those portions that stretch from Lackawanna County, Wilkes Scranton area, along that portion as
That's
well.
also
Like Show Hill,
coal.
I think.
Coal as well. Coal is a big driver of the Trump base, and they remain committed to Trump. So, like Armin said, those parts of Pennsylvania have seen the least reversion. The question is, can it make up for losses in and around the Scranton area up here, Collar counties, and as well up here in Erie?
And granted, Casey and Wolf did extremely well in the Mon Valley over there. But they were also, running against Scott Wagner and Lou Barletta and not Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to move on now that we've discussed Pennsylvania, which is undoubtedly an important state, to another important state that's geographically in a different place, and that is Florida, which is perpetually close. Voted for Trump by 1.5 or 1.2 percentage points over Clinton last time. And overall, when it comes to swing, we saw a lot of important counties end up swinging towards President Trump, or now President Trump, in the 2016 election. I'd like to start off by mentioning a county that I think, in a way, at least in the past few elections, has really been a bellwether for the state as a whole. Not always in margin, but at least in outcome. And I'd say that is Pinellas County, Florida. I think it's really fascinating because in 2016, Trump's win here, 1.1 percentage points, was near exactly the same as his statewide total in the state, or his statewide margin of victory. So I think Pinellas is going to be a fascinating one to watch. It was a narrow Bush County in 2004. It voted for McCain by 8 in 2008, it voted for Obama by 8 in 2008, and Obama by 5.6 in 2012. So it had around a 6-point swing right that resulted in a narrow Trump victory. And for a little bit of information on the map here, if I share my screen, if we want to talk about Pinellas. Over here to the left of Hillsborough County, which includes Tampa Bay. So, Pinellas, if we look at it as a county, it's pretty interestingly divided. Essentially, the Republican strength happens to be in the northern part of Pinellas County, whereas the Democratic strength is concentrated along the southern half of Pinellas County, and as well along the east bordering what would be Tampa Bay across the inlet. So it's a competitive county. Biden's expected to win it back this time. But interestingly enough, it has gone with the winner of the state in every election here since 2004. Obviously, it was wrong in 2000, but 2000 is a controversial election in Florida, so it's kind of a special case. But I'd like to ask you guys about Pinellas. What do you think Biden wins Pinellas by? Does he win it by more than Obama won it in 2012? And do you think it'll end up sticking with the outcome, or will the bellwether break? Will Trump win Florida without Pinellas? I'll throw it to anyone who wants to discuss this. So I'll throw it to Jared first, actually, because Jared hasn't spoken yet in a while. So, Jared, if you want, can Trump still win Florida without Pinellas, which has essentially gone with the winner of the state in every election since 2004?
Yes, he absolutely can win the state, even if he doesn't win Pinellas. And the reason why is because his coalition is going to look a lot different than it did back in 2016. And I'm sure we'll be talking about this a lot when we talk about the different counties that we're going to be looking at. But if you look at the 2018 results, which were quite good for Republicans in the senatorial race and the gubernatorial race, both Ron DeSantis and Rick Scott did not do nearly as well as Trump did in Pinellas County, and yet they won the state. And so the reason why is mainly because of the rebounding among especially Cuban American voters. I'm sure we'll be able to talk about that in a little bit. But Pinellas County, I don't think is going to be quite a bellwether. The reason why is because, first of all, it has a large senior population. A lot of senior citizens live there, and we're seeing that polling is looking quite propitious for Joe Biden among senior citizens. And so that's a demographic that I suspect is going to swing towards Biden. But also the suburban nature of the county means that there are a lot of well-educated voters there and just ones who are being turned away from the Trump brand. And so that's a county that I think is going to go Democratic, regardless of the state's outcome. Now, do you want me to go over maybe a county that I'm going to be looking at in the state?
Yeah, I just real quick want to say as well, looking at Pinellas, I would personally agree with you. I think Trump very well can still win Florida and arguably could be favored to win Florida. And I don't think he's going to need Pinellas County. I mean, as I said, even though it's been a bellwether in terms of going with the winner of the state, margin-wise, it has not been in sync. I mean, Obama won it by 5 in 2012, 8 points in 2008. Obviously, you had essentially a 3-point race statewide in 2008, 1-point race in 2016 or in 2012. Even in 2004, Bush won the state by around 5 points, but it only went to Bush in the county by around half of 1%. So what I'm trying to say is essentially it was lined up luckily with the margin in 2016, but it's almost like a stroke of coincidence. So Jackson, I was going to ask you before we go back to Jared, what do you think Biden's margin in Pinellas is going to be?
So I do think Biden wins Pinellas, and I do think Florida is going to see a lot of reversion to previous coalitions. It's going to be one of the few places where Trump, meaningfully improves in some portions of the state, which would probably be in southern Miami-Dade. But I think he wins Pinellas by about 4 points. Gillum won it by 3, Nelson won it by 5, and they both lost. And there are a string of 5 counties in the state that Nelson and Gillum won that Clinton lost, and they both lost. So there is no singular bellwether county for the state. It's really that margins matter.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I real quick want to go back to Jared because he had another county to bring up. But I think what we've essentially agreed on, in my personal opinion, is that the Pinellas win was almost a kind of upset in terms of Trump win. I mean, obviously it wasn't upset in terms of Trump winning it, but like we say, his coalition is going to be different this time. Pinellas may not play as big of a role, and it's unlikely to play as big of a role this time, which is something we saw in the 2018 midterm. So I agree with both of you guys on Pinellas, but it'll still be interesting to see because in 2016 it was kind of like icing on the cake for Trump's victory in Florida. But Jared, what was that other county in Florida you'd want to bring up here that you think is important to the viewers?
So this is certainly not going to be a bellwether county or one that is seen as a battleground, but one that I'm really going to be looking at is actually Sumter County. Sumter County is one that is near the I-4 corridor, and notably it has a large population of retirees. The Villages is located in Sumter County, characteristically similar to places like Lake County and Polk County, which are nearby. But Sumter County has usually given a bulwark to Republican candidates in the state because it has a large population of, again, senior citizens, most of whom vote Republican. And as I was mentioning earlier with Trump's difficulties among senior citizens, as we're seeing in polling, I think that a county like Sumter County could really be one of the reasons why, if Trump ends up losing the state narrowly, why that happened. And so even though Trump is going to be making considerable gains, I think, among a lot of Cuban voters, especially in Miami-Dade, a lot of registered Republicans in places like Sumter County, I think, are going to not vote for Trump this time around. And we're going to see them flip their preferences from 2016 and decide to vote for Joe Biden. And so I think that in a county like Sumter County, we're going to see a huge disparity between the voter registration there, between what party ballots are submitted versus how they actually vote. Mm-hmm. And if there's one place where Trump should be really concerned about, aside from the more suburban areas like Jacksonville and Tampa, it really should be these counties like Sumter County that have a large senior population.
Mm-hmm. And I have a similar Republican county to go to, actually.
Yeah, I'll get to you in 1 second, Eric. I wanted to bring up this data for Sumter County here because it was a county that we were looking at. And I think it's really a fascinating county for the same reason. I've actually heard my friend Armin talk about it as well, because it really is, in a way, going to be a metric to measure the senior drop-off, if there is a significant senior drop-off, as the polls indicate, away from Trump for Biden. And obviously, it's been getting incrementally more Republican since Bill Clinton last won it in 1996. But even if Biden manages to get, 33% here, 34%, that would be pretty impressive. And that would show that there is a significant block of senior voters there and retirees that have shifted their votes. And in a way, it could be a microcosm of the mood of that particular part of the Florida electorate for the state as a whole, even in one county that is still certain to go Republican like this one. But Eric, I'll get to you now. What's one county that you would like to bring up here?
Yeah, this is a similar camp to a county to the one Jared just mentioned. But one of the areas that Democrats actually have improved in lately is Escambia County, which is in the Panhandle. Now, obviously, as it's in the Panhandle, we may already know a lot about Florida by the point these votes start to come in. But the thing with this county is that it's the largest county in that portion of the Panhandle, and it's traditionally very Republican, very conservative. It's not voted for a Democrat since 1960, but in recent years, it's gotten a little bit less staunchly Republican. Bush won it 65-34, but Trump only won the county 57.6 to 37.3. And that margin actually decreased in the 2018 gubernatorial election. Democrats are able to pull within 18 percentage points. Now, obviously, in a smaller county, this might not be a big deal, but this is a county that is quite large. It has over almost 300,000 people in it. So any declines in this county would actually come from Trump base voters and from urban voters or older retirees. It's a coastal county. It has a large area. It has a large senior population, of course.
Yep.
Not as much as Sumter County or some other areas, but it does want to keep an eye out in terms of raw margins, because if Republicans are struggling in a place like this, if they're if it's closer to below 20 percentage points, I would think Republicans would start to raise some alarm bells as to their statewide performance.
And I'll get to Jackson's county in 1 second, but looking at Escambia County, it is very, very fascinating as a county, because it was actually one of the counties that, though traditionally Republican and still Republican by quite a significant margin, 20.3% in 2016, it actually got bluer from 2012 to 2016.
Yeah, that's the big thing.
Even as Florida as a whole got redder and obviously was flipped to the Republicans when it had previously voted for Barack Obama in 2012. So it was not very much more Democratic, but it was still significant to see a county like that become more Democratic if you look at the trends. So that's another one, a good one to watch, Eric. And Jackson, what's your county here you bring up?
This is going to sound like a pretty normie answer, but my county is Miami-Dade. And I think Miami-Dade is important solely because if I look at the final result in Miami-Dade, I will probably be able to extrapolate what happened in Florida. Clinton won it by 30 points. She had a record vote margin. She really ran up the score there, and she lost because of losses in exurban North and Central Florida. And Bill Nelson only won it by 21. Andrew Gillum only won it by 20. So there were some real shifts to the Republicans in 2018, and that shift is seeming to hold for Trump. He's somewhat likely to improve in Miami-Dade. I'd say very likely. If Biden wins Miami-Dade by 25 points, he's probably set for the state. If he wins it by Nelson margins, it really depends on Central and North Florida. But if I'm a Democrat and I'm seeing significant sliding in Miami-Dade, I'm not happy with what's happening.
Yeah, and it was a county that, just for reference, it voted for Barack Obama by 23.7 points, so around 24 points in 2012. So like Jackson said, if a Biden can get around 25% there, should still be enough to win Florida. Obviously, he'd like to perform at and about what Clinton got, so 29.4 points. He'd like to do that. But again, given Trump's appeal with the Cuban voters, it's hard to know. It's almost like a wild card variable down there. We don't know quite how well Biden will do. And like Jackson said, besides some region like Western Pennsylvania, I would say that South Florida is probably the spot where Trump has the best chance of improving on his 2016 performance from this election.
Yeah, and keep in mind, even any small shifts in a county this large can be big in terms of votes. This county has 2.7 million people. It has a lot of voters that turn out. Even a shift of 1 percentage point here could be enough to swing an election.
Well, it cast almost 1 million votes last time, so obviously a significant portion of the Florida electorate.
One thing I'm going to be curious about when I'm looking at the results is actually how Trump's performance in Miami-Dade compares to the 2018 performances, specifically Ron DeSantis' performance. He actually did better in the county than Rick Scott. And the reason why is because we've seen that a lot of this Cuban demographic has shifted heavily towards Trump. So Trump is bound to improve there in relation to his 2016 performance. But the real question is, how is it going to compare to the 2018 results? Because if Trump does not meet those expectations, it's likely that he's not going to be able to secure just enough of a margin to be able to win the state. And one interesting observation is that when comparing sort of the energy behind different candidates that were running in the county, it seems like, or at least polls indicate that Trump is just doing a lot better among Cuban Americans. And there's been a lot of shifts there. In 2016, Trump barely won the city of Hialeah, which is a usual Republican stronghold. He won it by around 1%. And based on current polling and just based on trends there, it's likely that he's going to win it by a much wider margin this time.
And it's interesting because if there's any part of the Hispanic community where Trump stands to make real gains or already has significant support, it is that Cuban community. And that's why Southern Florida is a wild card. And that's why the margin there, even though Democrats may look at it or observers may look at it and say, well, it's just another solid Democratic county. Like Jackson said, the margins there are important. It's really important to see because it can have a bearing on the statewide performance, whether Biden's underperforming Clinton by too much to the point where he is at risk of losing the state or by just enough where he still has a shot at winning Florida. And it's kind of like I mentioned earlier with Philadelphia County in Pennsylvania. You know, if Biden's hitting Obama 2012 numbers there, 4 or 5 points ahead of where Clinton was, that's good. That's definitely beneficial, especially if he doesn't claw back enough support in Western Pennsylvania. One more county real quick, in Florida before we move on, and I find it to be an interesting county, is actually Duval County, so the Jacksonville area. So, you know, Duval County in the Senate race in 2018 did vote for Bill Nelson. Looking at the results in 2016, it was one of a handful of counties in Florida that swung towards the Democrats. And Trump won Duval County by about 1.5% over Hillary Clinton. And what I'm really fascinated about is this county pretty much mirrored the statewide result in 2016. I mean, it was very, very much on the dot in a similar way to Pinellas, about 1.3%, just about 0.1% over Trump's statewide margin. And one thing I think is interesting here is this county hasn't voted Democratic for president since 1976. Carter won it by 17 points, but since then it has not voted Democratic. The closest it came was in 2008. It actually went to McCain by 1.9%. And obviously that was a watershed election for the Democrats. But just to show which way the county is going long term, in 2012 it voted for Romney by 3.6 points, but in 2016 it actually voted for Trump by only 1.3 points, which is the closest the Democrats have come to winning the county since 1976. And again, this is a county that narrowly voted for Bill Nelson. It's a county that I think Joe Biden stands a good shot of actually flipping from Trump and becoming the first Democrat to win it since Jimmy Carter. But I think it's going to be a fascinating county to watch. And I wanted to hear your guys' thoughts on Duval County and how you think it's going to vote tomorrow, because it's one of those other counties that I'm watching just because I think it's a pretty fascinating county in terms of its relation with the statewide result and its traditional propensity to vote Republican, but it's recent, I guess you could say, blueing. I know Jackson will say that's not a word, but anyone's thoughts on Duval? I mean, it's clearly gotten more Democratic over the last decade and a half.
Yeah, what's interesting about Duval is that I was in a group chat with Republicans on other Republicans on election night in 2018, and we thought Florida was done. We saw Duval go blue. We're like, yep, this is done. It's not happening. Republicans can't win. They found a way to win without Duval County. It's an interesting area because it's very diverse. Politically, it's more conservative than you would expect. The Democratic mayors that it's produced have tended to be quite conservative overall, and so it's not a particularly liberal area, but it is one that's becoming more diverse and becoming more friendly to the Democratic Party overall. I wouldn't be shocked if Joe Biden flips it.
Mm-hmm. And I'll take a quick comment from you guys real quick, but I just want to note as well that even if Joe Biden does what he's expected to do and flips Duval, flips Pinellas, it wasn't enough to help Bill Nelson. And the really scary thing, I guess, for the Biden campaign, their nightmare scenario is, yes, they may flip counties like that, but if they hit Nelson numbers or even Obama 2012 numbers in Miami-Dade, it might not be enough for them to win the state statewide. So I think that's something they're looking at there. And that really it would be nice to have these gains in Duval and Pinellas, reverting back to former Pinellas and continuing Democratic trends in Duval. But at the end of the day, I personally would say that I agree with Jackson in saying that Miami-Dade is the most important county in Florida to watch.
Mm-hmm. I have one other county in South Florida to pay attention to, if I could plug it real quick.
Go ahead.
Palm Beach County. This is a weird county in that it's actually trending towards Republicans over the last few years. It's actually been a fairly consistent trend going back to the Bush administration, if you even look back at it. You know, the last election, Democrats won at 56-41.
Just add a
That's
quick data note for you, just for the viewers. This was a county that voted for Al Gore by 27 points, but it only voted for Clinton by 15. So continue,
Yeah.
Eric. I just thought that would.
It has a lot of white working class individuals. It's not as diverse, for example, as Broward County or Palm Beach, but it is because it's actually kind of, if you look at a map of Florida traditionally, it was Palm Beach and Broward were over 60% Democratic, and then Miami-Dade was under 60%. Now it's actually reversed, where Broward and Miami-Dade are getting 60%, but in Palm Beach, Democrats are now getting in the mid-50s in a lot of ones. And this trend carried over in the 2018 election. So this is one other county in South Florida to pay attention to see if Trump has made any improvements in this area.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, we're going to have to move on to the next state because we still have to cover. We're not going to hit every state tonight, but I'd like to also make sure we get to Georgia, North Carolina, Texas, and do some brief notes on some other counties in Ohio, Michigan, and Arizona, because those are also important states. But particularly, I want to make sure we get to North Carolina, Georgia, and Texas, because those have really come into the fold as states that could definitely decide this election. Mm-hmm. Georgia, at least looking at the polling, stands to be the closest presidential contest tomorrow. It very well could be. And this was, on election night 2016, it seemed closer than expected. It ended up being won by Trump by a little under 5 percentage points. So it was definitely an interesting race in 2016. But one of the more stark aspects of it for the Republicans was the swing from 2012 to 2016. And you can see this when you look at why Democrats are favored to flip Georgia's 7th district and retain Georgia's 6th district, especially if Biden's carrying Georgia, as we'll get to later. His margins in the suburbs north of Atlanta, the Atlanta metro, should go up. But in counties like Cobb County and Gwinnett County, both of which voted for Romney in 2012, you saw pretty significant swings towards the Democrats. I mean, Gwinnett is diversifying. It's the home of that 7th district. It ended up going to Clinton by 6 points. So we're going to talk about that, and I guess that's something I'll start with here. So we're in Georgia, one of the most interesting states of this election, in my opinion. And my county that I'm going to bring up is Gwinnett County. And this is not our congressional episode, so we're just going to focus on president because we can go watch our House and Senate ones. But Gwinnett County was a county that voted for Romney by 9 points in 2012 and ended up voting for Hillary Clinton by about 6 points in 2016. And Biden's expected to outperform Hillary Clinton here because the shift towards the Democrats has seemingly only happened to increase, at least in terms of political pundits' expectations over the last 4 years here. I mean, it led to the flip. It led to a surprisingly close race in Georgia's 7th district in 2018, which is now a seat that Democrats are expected to flip this cycle. And there really isn't a universe in which Biden could win Georgia without winning Gwinnett County, and probably by a decent margin. And by extension, it's really hard to see Biden winning Georgia without carrying the 6th and the 7th district. Almost impossible. So I guess I'll pose it to you guys. I mean, Gwinnett County is a county that's been diversifying racially and moving towards the left. So how do you guys think Gwinnett votes? How well do you think Biden does in Gwinnett, just as our starter county? And do you think it truly is in some way an exemplification of the trend we're seeing in terms of these traditionally Republican areas northeast of Atlanta? So I'll throw it to Jackson first.
Oh, yeah. So in order to win Georgia, Biden probably has to crack 60% in Gwinnett. Abrams won it by about 14.5, as you said. Clinton won it by 6. And I know Elections Daily did quite the memorable piece on, it was called A Case Study on Blue Georgia and Purple North Carolina, which basically said that the bulk of the growth has been coming in blue trending areas in Georgia, and that is not necessarily the case in North Carolina. North Carolina's had a lot of growth in Republican trending areas. So Gwinnett County will certainly be crucial, and as I said, Biden has to get 61% in order to win statewide.
And just a note there, I mean, Abrams got 56% or 56% in that county as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, obviously, I was literally going to mention that before, after Jackson had mentioned it, but I figured I'd show it right there. Is apparently some Republicans in Georgia I've talked to are not aware that Gwinnett County has been literally stagnant for Republicans for a decade now, as Democrats have rocketed from 60,000 votes in 2000 to 160,000 votes over that in 2016. Obviously, this is a really important county for Democrats. It kind of typifies not only the shifting college-educated vote, but also the growing diversity of Georgia. This is now a majority non-white county. It's very racially diverse, a large Asian population in addition to African American and Hispanic populations.
Mm-hmm. And I guess real quick, another county that we should also be talking about in tandem here is Georgia's famous Fulton County, which is probably the most well-known county in Georgia. But between 2012 and 2016, you saw an incredible swing here, particularly in northern Fulton. I mean, the 6th district is essentially composed largely of northern Fulton. And Mitt Romney actually won the 6th district by, I think, 25 points in 2012 or around there, something pretty ridiculous. Trump only carried it by a percentage and a half in 2016, if that tells you anything about not only the swing statewide, but the swing in the 6th district alone. The Democrats initially lost that special election there. That swing really gave them hope in 2018. A lot of attention was paid to Lucy McBath's campaign against Karen Handel. Lucy McBath won. Now Biden's expected to do well in Fulton again, and Lucy McBath, by extension, is expected to do well against Karen Handel in that House race. So Fulton County is another one I talk about because it effectively went as a county as a whole, it went from Obama by 29 to Clinton by 41. So again, a lot of that Democratic swing has to do with improving Democratic fortunes in the northern part of the county, whereas the southern part of Fulton is already, has a strong minority population and is traditionally Democratic. So I'll throw this question to Jared because I know he wanted to talk earlier. Jared, what do you think about Fulton County's swing between 2012 and 2016? How do you think it really played into the 2018 midterms with that McBath congressional victory? And what are you expecting this election? How significant is it going to be for Biden? And can Biden outdo Clinton in this country?
Yeah, so northern Fulton County experienced a remarkable swing from 2012 to 2016. And I think the acceleration is going to continue into this year. I don't believe it's going to swing by 20 points again because Trump hit sort of a low point for Republicans, but it's definitely going to swing quite remarkably towards Democrats, even more so from 2016. Northern Fulton County possesses an entirely different identity from the rest of Fulton County. The rest of Fulton County contains obviously the city of Atlanta. The northern Fulton County is much more suburban, much whiter than the rest of Fulton County, and it has a higher median income, much more so than the rest of Fulton County. And so it's wholly asynchronous from the rest of the county. And one way that I really like to gauge this part of Fulton County is by looking at the 6th district specifically and seeing how candidates have won. The 6th district is composed of eastern Cobb County, northern Fulton County, and then northwestern, sort of northern DeKalb County. And so when you look at the county results for specific races in that district, you see that Republicans have won the district by winning the Cobb County portion, but also by at least narrowly winning the Fulton County portion. And this is what Trump did in 2016. When Karen Handel won the special election in 2017 in this district, she managed to win the northern portion of Fulton County quite narrowly. She's from there. She's from Roswell. And then in 2018, when it flipped to Lucy McBath was able to make it virtually tied in the Fulton County part. And that was enough to give us victory there. And so...
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Right. And so this is really a testament to the fact that northern Fulton County is just so different. And I think that northern Fulton County with cities like Johns Creek, Alpharetta, Roswell, Milton, and those very wealthy in general cities, I think they're going to accelerate even further to the left than 2016.
And before Eric makes a point, I know he wants to make with this map.
I was just showing that as assistance for Jared.
And I just wanted to bring up the 6th district as well, which really does exemplify, in my opinion, as I mentioned earlier, that swing in northern Fulton. I mean, it was literally a Romney plus 20 seat, a very heavily Republican seat in the 2012 presidential election, and it went to a Trump plus 1.5 seat. Now it's probably going to go. Obviously, we can't say anything for certain on here, but it's highly likely it goes to a seat that Biden wins by a decent amount. And, that's only going to help someone like Lucy McBath, who stands to just eventually outrun Joe Biden. And we're going to have to see how that goes. But again, I mean, Jackson, a county I wanted to ask you about that we haven't touched on yet, but it's in a similar class as the northern part of Fulton County and Gwinnett County in terms of diversifying more to the Democrats. I'm going to get to that later, actually. But the first one I wanted to ask you about was Cobb County. It was a Romney plus 12 county that went to Clinton by 2. So another one with big swing.
Yeah. Cobb had a big swing, and it was, a little bit less than Gwinnett, if I do have it correctly, and it was a smaller margin. I believe Clinton only won it by 4. and Abrams won it by about 9.5. It is very similar to Gwinnett. It's Biden's not going to get 60% there. If he's getting 60% there, it's a total blowout. But yeah, it's in a very similar boat, and will probably cast actually a remarkably similar number of votes to Gwinnett. They're basically the same county in terms of population. But it is a little less elastic than Gwinnett, so I don't expect it to have quite the same caliber of swing.
And let me ask you again as well, and we'll have the whole panel discuss this. But one really fascinating county that that my friend Miles actually brought up on the Thursday Crystal Ball stream last week is Forsyth County, and I think it's really fascinating because it's still a solidly red county. Like, I want to know that to the viewers. Donald Trump's still going to win it by a significant margin, but the real thing that's interesting here is the incremental positive trends for the Democrats here at this county level. So I'll share some data with you guys real quick before I throw it to the panel from the election atlas. But Forsyth suggests not only long-term trends that benefit the Democrats in this area, but in this county specifically. In 2012, it voted for Mitt Romney by 63 points, but in 2016, it only voted for Trump by 47 points. That is a significant margin. Not only did Trump fall from Romney's performance by about 10%, but Barack Obama only got 17% here last time in 2012, and Hillary Clinton managed to get that up to almost 24%. If you just want to look at it on a basic level, I didn't mean to do that. If you want to look at it on a basic level, it's fascinating. It's really, truly fascinating that Hillary Clinton managed to increase the appeal here. Not only did Trump fall, but Clinton increased by about 5 points or so. And also in the gubernatorial data I have here, Stacey Abrams came even closer, obviously, than Hillary Clinton to winning statewide. Just narrowly lost in that 2018 governor's race. But Abrams was able to get 28% of the vote, which is near 30% of the vote, which is very, very impressive in a county where Democrats have traditionally not even gotten over 20% of the vote. And my guess for you, Jackson, is I think we can say that even if Biden narrowly loses Georgia, his coalition will probably be similar to Stacey Abrams in a way. So I would definitely say personally that it's more likely he's closer to Abrams' 28% than Hillary Clinton's 24% in Forsyth. But what's your opinion on how Forsyth's going to vote? Does he underperform that gubernatorial margin, or is it possible he even gets 30% in Forsyth?
So my hot take is that he gets to 30, and Forsyth was the biggest swing from 2012 to 2016. It's these kind of counties in exurban North Georgia, which will probably decide the presidency in Georgia. None of them are going to flip. I mean, far from it. But those margins will matter. I do think he can bring it under 40%. He kind of seems like the candidate who would be able to do that. But remember, this was H.W. Bush's, second best county in 1992. This was, the linchpin for any Republican victory in Georgia back when Georgia was kind of a solidly Democratic South state. It will be very fascinating. And yeah, as I said, I do think Biden brings Trump under 70, but.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Before
we move on from Georgia, I just want to leave the floor open. Do any of you have any mentions on any counties we've mentioned? I know Eric wants to make a point on Forsyth, and then after that, do you guys have any other wild card counties you want the viewers to watch? So, Eric, you go first.
Yeah. So one thing I think people don't really mention so much with Fulton is obviously North Fulton is trending Democratic to a large degree. There's actually incredibly still room for Democrats to grow in South Fulton. Mm-hmm. If you actually look at because believe it or not, there is a large portion of white voters in South Fulton that are in urban Atlanta that have been able to trend Democratic. So I've got this highlighted right here. I cut it clean along Sandy Springs, which is kind of the middle of Atlanta. And you look at this right here. South Fulton actually has more people than North Fulton. In 2018, Republicans managed to win almost 18% of the vote. By 2016, they'd only gotten to 14%, and that margin held exactly in the gubernatorial race. So Democrats basically picked up all of those voters that had defected. Now, if Georgia is really close, that's not an insignificant amount of voters at all. Again, we're looking at a scenario here where Georgia could be within 20, 30, 40, 50,000 votes. And unlike in state elections, there's no runoff for the presidential race.
Hot take, Georgia could very much be the new Florida 2000. I genuinely think my hot take is that Georgia will be ridiculously close.
Mm-hmm. And if that's the case, South Fulton, some of those white voters there that are more Republican, that have supported them even down ballot, supported Republican candidates or independent conservatives, could hand the election to Biden in a very, very close race.
So what's the ballot design like in Fulton County? If we really wanted to
Oh
be.
God.
We're gonna have to move on because there are two more important states I want to hit. First one's North Carolina, second one's Texas. So we're gonna limit the amount of counties we talk about because we have to try and keep these episodes around about an hour, 15 minutes length. So for these next two states, I'm sorry guys, but I want you to just pick the most important county, and we want to just come up with like the two or three most important counties.
Oh, that's gonna be tricky for North
For
Carolina.
the viewers, but yes, I do want you to do it for North Carolina, Eric. So I'm going to have Eric discuss North Carolina here, and I'll pull up any data he needs to back up his points. So Eric, go ahead and start.
So North Carolina is weird. We don't have bellwether counties. Most of our population is centered in the middle portion of the state, kind of stretches from the Charlotte area exurbs to Raleigh, Durham. If there was a bellwether county, it would probably be New Hanover, and I say that very narrowly because New Hanover's not a bellwether. It's more of if Republicans have lost New Hanover County, traditionally they're not winning statewide. And it's actually a county that Democrats had flipped this time. Wilmington's becoming much more diverse. It's very educated area, lots of senior voters. The one I would focus on is someone in the comment mentioned, Travis Wilson, who I'm very familiar with, that we're friendly in person, is Robeson County. It's the most diverse county that voted for Donald Trump. It has a substantial portion of the Lumbee Indian tribe who are very conservative socially. Both presidential candidates officially support the recognition of the Lumbee tribe, which is truly a really good achievement for them. And I hope, as a person and as someone who pays attention to fairness in politics and fairness in representation, that the government does recognize them federally. Whether that plays into the race could be up for grabs. This is a very, very diverse, socially conservative county that flipped heavily for Donald Trump, as you can see right there. He went from a 17-point win for Barack Obama to a 4-point win for Donald Trump. And that was off of the strength of the Lumbee tribe. So that's really one to keep an eye on.
Mm-hmm. And out of curiosity, Eric, how do you see Robeson voting this time?
I think it holds. I think it holds fairly narrowly. The problem with it here is that the Lumbee at the state level in the gubernatorial race, the Lumbee trend there was almost certainly in large part due to Pat McCrory's generally excellent handling of hurricane relief. That's actually what I think brought him back to being competitive in that race, was that he handled the hurricane that hit very well. Donald Trump is different, though. This hasn't just bled into the top level. This has gone into state Senate candidates, state House candidates, have all gotten very closer. I don't see any evidence of a snapping back in this county. If anything, Republicans almost claimed a second House seat last time. They did very well there. So I don't think it flips, but I could see Trump winning it by 1 or winning it by half a point. Because the Lumbee, if he just decided not to recognize the Lumbee tribe, just said, screw the Lumbee, I don't want to recognize them, yeah, the county would probably be gone. But he kind of took the wind out of the sails that Biden announced when he did support the recognition of the tribe.
And Eric, the last county I want to ask you about in North Carolina is another one of those urban counties that people are looking at. Actually, two brief little things. First, Mecklenburg County. I want to ask you about that because Mecklenburg County was one of the counties where Democrats saw an increase in support from a 22-point Obama win to a 29-point Clinton win. So that's the first one. Can Biden top that and increase that, and how significant is it? And secondly, in heavily Republican Union County, right to the southeast of Mecklenburg, it actually has been a relatively stable county. It's arguably been getting slightly more Republican. But this is one of those counties that Democrats seemingly think they can at least trim Trump's margin in a bit. I think Biden would like to get it down from a 30-point win to a 26-point win, something like 2008. But how do you see these counties voting margin-wise, and how significant do you think it will be for the state as a whole? That's my question.
Yeah, so Mecklenburg is a bit problematic for Republicans, not as much long-term as Wake. I think there's room for the floor to just completely collapse in Wake County. Mecklenburg, you could easily see a Joe Biden get around 64, 65% here. There's still a base of fiscally conservative, moderate voters. If you look at the income tax referendum, for example, while it failed in places like Wake County and and Durham, Orange counties, where Chapel Hill is, it actually passed in Mecklenburg County. Voters here still like a fiscally conservative sort of government in the suburbs in particular, but Trump is really toxic here, and it's really bled into traditionally Republican South Charlotte, as well as into the northern areas, Huntersville area in particular. So that's obviously Republicans have room to fall. Union County, I don't think Democrats have a huge opportunity here. Obviously, it's about keeping margins down. Basically, the Union County is two parts. The eastern portion of the county is more like places like Anson County in terms of competitiveness. It's not Democratic, but it's more rural. Definitely not as associated with Charlotte. And Republicans are gaining there. They also did pretty well in 2016 and 2018 in the more Charlotte adjacent portions. Obviously, if Charlotte goes really, really poorly for Republicans, that could bleed over. You could actually see maybe a blue precinct or two. But I would think the real target for Democrats would be Cabarrus County, which actually has a large city, Concord, one of the largest cities in the state, and is trending Democratic to a degree.
Mm-hmm. Can you briefly, just one more thing for the viewers about North Carolina? It was something I forgot to mention, and it was a pretty big thing. But two other counties that I'm personally going to be watching. Number one of the counties I'm going to be watching, if my thing would load, is going to be Durham, because a lot like Mecklenburg County, the margin for the Democrats actually grew there between 2012 and 2016. But also it's important to look at Wake as well, which is right to the southeast of Durham. And looking at how Wake voted in that last presidential election, Hillary Clinton carried Wake by 20 percentage points, which was, again, like Durham, it swung towards the Democrats. It was about 9% up from previous margins.
Can I pin a comment here from Travis, who is from Union County? He's involved there.
You can, but also after that, just before we're done, please make sure I just want to hear you address not only Durham, but also Wake County, where you said earlier the floor could drop out this election.
Yeah, definitely. So I'll mention Durham and Wake. Durham is very diverse. It's actually becoming more liberal. It's been fairly establishment in terms of its support, and there are ancestral Republican areas in the northern portions, which are tobacco farming. The problem is it's just been a Democratic stronghold forever, and there is room to improve because of its diversity and also with turnout. The question is whether or not college support could be hurt from Duke University, which is located there, as well as a little portion of Chapel Hill that's in the county. Wake is a problem for Republicans. This is a county that I actually think could, in the long run, go past Mecklenburg. It's very white. It's very heavy with transplants from other states, and it voted against every single state referendum in 2016 or 2018. Including uncontroversial ones like is hunting or fishing good and Marcy's Law, which passed pretty much everywhere else. It's gone in the Republican column, and there's problems there. The one other thing I wanted to mention here, besides those, which are very important, obviously, if Democrats can get to 60% in Wake, I think that's where they were around last time. If they can get higher than that, that'd be a really good night for them.
57 last time, but they hit 57 in Durham. So
it's the largest county in the state. I mean, they could eat over 60% if something goes wrong. One thing I want to mention again with Union County is Travis Wilson. I'm familiar with him. He's involved with the Union County side. They've had just massive turnout in Union County, and I don't think that's from the Democratic side. I think this is from excited Republicans. This has been places like Waxhaw have been, a little bit more out there than the Charlotte stuff. I don't think that I've seen that there. I think it may be a base turnout thing, but again, we'll see. Can I mention two counties very quickly? I don't want to go into them much.
Just take less than a minute because we have to spend the next 10 minutes on Texas before.
And I'll shut up for the rest of that portion. But I figured I'd mention actually five. I'll mention five real quick. I'll just name them. Pasquotank County, Trump almost flipped it in 2016. He probably won't flip it this time, but it's a white working class diverse area with minority population. Lenoir County is diverse and is very narrowly voted for Republicans. Nash County is trending Democratic. It's very rural, very diverse. And then in the mountains, you have Watauga County, which is home to Appalachian State University, my alma mater. It's trending Democratic, but obviously college students, we're not sure how they're going to turn out or if that will affect anything. Last time it narrowly voted for Clinton. This time it could go over 50% Democratic if the cards are right. And then finally, Jackson County, home of Western Carolina University, a very overrated university, in my opinion, is the rival of Appalachian State historically, voted for Trump by 10 points, but obviously with the college there, that could be a factor.
So, yeah, thank you, Eric. So now we're going to move on to Texas, our last state, looking at it as a swing state. There are plenty of can someone mute themselves or does an echo? I don't know. Is it gone now? Okay, it's gone. So Texas, obviously, a lot like Georgia, has come into the fold. I mean, in 2016, it was a state that voted for Trump by about 9 points. Now it's looking like a toss-up. I do still think Trump will end up winning it by 2 points, around 2 points. That's my prediction. I know I'll get roasted if that's not true, but we'll see. But there's some counties that I wanted to bring up briefly and ask you about, and this is actually from someone you should follow on Twitter, Matt Moan. Does a lot of stuff. I might have pronounced his name wrong, but you should follow him. So let me get you his Twitter handle. But he actually, his Twitter handle is @MattMXHN. But he actually released something today called 8 Easy Ways to Look For, or What to Look For in 8 Counties to Look At for a Blue Texas. And I'll just read this off real quick for evidence for you guys. And then we can discuss some of these counties for the next 5 minutes or so until we wrap up. And obviously, there's too much to talk about to do in such a short time, but we'll try and hit all the big ones. So, for one, and all of these, just to make sure, these are all factors that would lead to a blue Texas or be indicative of a blue Texas, which hasn't happened since 1976. And if it does happen, it would have obviously a different coalition. Travis County, Biden above 75%. That's Austin. Bayhar County is San Antonio, Biden above 60%. Hidalgo County there at the very bottom along the Rio Grande, kind of an epitome of Hispanic support in the Rio Grande Valley. Biden winning by more than 40 points would be indicative of really strong performance with Rio Grande Valley Hispanics. Fort Bend County, which plays a major role in that close 22nd district congressional race where we expect Troy Nehls to beat Bucarney in a close race, but Biden winning Fort Bend by more than 15 points is on here. Biden close to 70% in Dallas County. Biden above 60% in Harris County, which would be Houston. And then the last two on here, Collin County north of Dallas, if Trump's winning by less than 3%, that would be indicative of a Biden victory. And in Tarrant County, right to the west of Dallas, which is turning blue, Biden winning by 3 to 4 there would be indicative of that. So real quick, I just want to go to each of you to close this out. Please pick one county that you're going to be watching out, it was probably on this list of counties I just read, and then talk about why you think it would be indicative of a blue or red Texas. So we'll start with Jared since he hasn't spoken in a while.
So one of the counties that you mentioned was Fort Bend County. Fort Bend County is a suburban Houston county, and it has absolutely exploded in population in the past 20 years. It is, again, located southwest of Harris County. It's a county that went for Republicans, in the foreseeable past, or at least historically it's been a Republican county. Went for McCain and Mitt Romney by narrowing in margins, but Hillary Clinton managed to snag the county by, I believe, around 7% in 2016. Right. If you look at this county, it's one that's incredibly diverse. There is a burgeoning population of Hispanics, African Americans, as well as a lot of Asian Americans. There's a large Hindu community there. And because of that, we're seeing just a huge change in the political geography and demography there. The 22nd district, which overlaps with most of the county, it's a sort of gerrymandered district that's backfired to a certain extent, but it really shows a lot of the troubles that Republicans are having. It's a district that went for Donald Trump by around by between 5 and 10%, and it's one that is going to be very close this time around, and we're going to see a competitive congressional race there with Troy Nehls and Sheree Preston Kulkarni. But it really does exemplify, or really does show the fact that this is a county that's going to be very important. And I think that Biden is going to win this county by double digits, certainly. It'll be interesting if Biden's able to get around 60% of the vote there. If so, that's going to be indicative of a very bad night for Republicans. And so it's not really a bellwether county. Biden is almost certainly going to win it. I don't see any situation where Trump wins it at all. But looking at the margin there, it'll tell a whole other story.
And if Nehls wants to win, he has to really run up the score on the Brazoria portion and outrun Trump significantly in his native county of Fort Bend. Even if he doesn't win Fort Bend, he needs to do well enough there to make up for, obviously, what's going to be a pretty big disparity likely between Biden and Trump, given this was already a Clinton +6 county. Armin, what's your county in Texas?
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb here and actually say that I'm going to be watching Jefferson County, which is home to Beaumont. What?
And can you describe why for a little bit to the viewers?
Yeah, so Jefferson County is home to Beaumont, which is as Jackson says, the Florida of Texas. It's a mid-sized city about 200. The county's about 300,000 people, which in Texas standards is pretty small, and it's basically 50-50 in terms of white and black population, and it's extremely inelastic. If you look at the vote totals from 2008,
yeah, I'm pulling them up for you real quick.
2016.
It's fascinating.
Pretty much as evenly divided politically as it is racially.
Yeah,
it's the deep south of Texas. This is the deep south portion of Texas.
Yeah, it's right next to Vidor, Texas, known for not being very hospitable to, I guess, minority people. So that should tell you at least a little bit about how racially polarized the area is. But as you can see, Obama won it twice, and the Republicans have basically gotten 48 to 49% of the vote every time. And if you look at the raw vote numbers, when Trump flipped it, he actually got fewer votes. He actually got 380 votes fewer than Mitt Romney did. But then Beto O'Rourke flipped it back in 2018 with turnout. So I think Jefferson is a good proxy for how minority turnout is going to be. If Biden can win it by maybe 2, he's probably going to win Texas.
Mm-hmm. And this was obviously, essentially, O'Rourke won it by 0.5%, which is pretty much the same margin that it went to Donald Trump.
Yeah, that's like 400 votes or something. Yeah,
if
he's winning it by more than 2, he's winning Texas.
It's actually swung Republican 7 elections in a row. It swung Republican from Dukakis to Clinton in 1992, and it swung Republican since then. Clinton did worse in 1996. Gore did even worse.
By infinitesimally small margins.
Yeah.
I mean, yes. And
overall, it's remained a very evenly divided county politically.
Mm-hmm. It's inched along.
I guess that means, Jackson, what's your county?
Oh, I have to choose a county. Okay, well, as Dave Wasserman loves to talk about, my county will be Collin. And Collin County was one of the reddest counties in Texas back when Texas was, first shifting to the Republicans. Republicans historically really run up the score there. Romney won it by a lot, I believe, over 30 points, and Clinton lost it by about 17. It was like 55 to 38. And then Beto O'Rourke lost it by 6. And what's interesting is that you can't really use uniform swing with Texas because it was kind of proven that Beto didn't improve too much in the rural areas of Texas. So if Biden is going to win Texas, he has to do the swing in Collin County has to be more than the swing statewide. He probably has to win the county or lose it by 0.5 point, 1 point at most in order to win Texas. But
that's that little diagram. Yeah. And I think that's fascinating as well, because as that little diagram I brought up earlier was saying, it describes a possibility of a blue Texas, even if Biden can get the margin down for Trump in Collin County to around 2 to 3 points, which would be far less than a 16-point margin. But again, the long-term swing here, the fact that this was a competitive county, not only in this election but also in the 2018 Senate race, should show you how things are going long-term. Because back in 2000, Bush won this county by 50 points. So I think it's really interesting that a county that was Bush by 50 points only 2 decades ago now stands the chance of only narrowly voting Republican or possibly going Democratic, depending on how well Biden does in the state. And that leaves Eric for your last pick, your county pick. What are you watching?
Yeah. So I have one county here, but there's 2 that kind of pair along with it pretty easily, and that's Lubbock County. Lubbock is a mid-sized city in the middle of Texas. It's large and it's very Republican, but it's becoming a little bit more Democratic recently if you look at the vote totals. And then the similar category would be Potter County, home of Amarillo, and Ector County, home of Odessa, although they're smaller. This is a county that voted for Mitt Romney with around 69.6% of the vote. Really, really strong performance for him there. Then the Republican vote share declined on top of the Democrats losing a little bit. And then if you look at the Senate election, basically all of those votes that went to the third parties or to not voting went to Beto O'Rourke. He got 35% of the vote here. If you look at Potter County and Ector County, he also got over 30%. So basically this is a place where you can kind of eat into a Democratic margin a little bit. It's a city. It's a fairly urban area, and it's large. It's got around 300,000 people, 280,000, even though the turnout's not spectacular. If Biden is doing well in places like this, getting around 35, 37% of the vote, he may be having a good night.
Mm-hmm. And I'll pick my county real quick, and that's Tarrant County, which is right to the west of Dallas. It's another one of those counties that is turning blue pretty quickly. As you can see here, between 2012 and 2016, it effectively shifted about 7 points towards the left. Trump only won it by 8.6 points. But something I think that's a really good sign for the Democrats, especially if Biden is either losing Texas narrowly or winning Texas narrowly, happens to be Beto O'Rourke's margin here. He won it very narrowly. It was a very close win. And my guess is, since he lost by about 2 statewide, assuming the coalitions don't change significantly, a Biden win here by 2 to 3 points would be indicative of a win in the state as a whole. And actually, let me pull up that chart again to see exactly what it gave. Yeah, that was about what I guessed, around 2 to 3 points there. For if he's winning Tarrant by around 2 to 3 points, that's a good sign. If Trump holds Tarrant, Biden's not winning Texas, and it's still technically possible for Trump to win Texas, even if Tarrant is going blue by only about 1% or less, because obviously Beto O'Rourke won it by about 1%, and the state as a whole still went Republican by about 2 points. So that would be my county to watch, is Tarrant. So overall, guys, are you guys excited for the election tomorrow? I mean, that's kind of a dumb question. I know we all are.
Polls in Dixville, Notch, and Hart's location, and Millsfield in New Hampshire close in less than 3 hours. We will have our first results of 2020 extremely quickly, so that will be fun.
I'm pretty excited. I'm not.
Dixville, Notch doesn't do mail-in
trouble
ballots,
sleeping.
right?
I have no idea.
And this could be one of the last Dixville Notch election nights. They're rapidly declining in population. They may be below the threshold where they can do this pretty soon.
Well, I mean, just for the record, Dixville Notch last time
had like 20 votes.
Four for Clinton, two for Trump.
Two for Trump, one for Gary Johnson. This time, I think it'd be pretty ironic if it was like all votes for Michael Bloomberg or something. But we'll have to see. Anyway, we're all going to have trouble sleeping because it's election night, but tomorrow is election day. So thank you for watching this.
Thank you.
We may be very accurate with our predictions, or we may have the crystal ball shattered. We'll have to see tomorrow. But we should have a pretty good idea of putting the puzzle pieces together for House, Senate, Governor, and President. A lot of the competitive races will not be decided tomorrow, but we should have most of the votes cast there to at least compare or begin to compare to past elections and look at swings and how trends over the past few decades continue or change. So fascinating stuff. Thank you guys for coming on tonight. Really appreciate you guys being here, and make sure you tune into our coverage. We're going to be live at 6 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow, all night. Cover literally all night, covering the election. We're going to have graphics, live maps, results updates that are fully accurate, supported by Decision Desk. We'd like to thank them, and we're 100% excited for tomorrow. Please come and please watch. Thank you, and good night, everybody.
Yeah.